Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. A couple of days before a deadly suicide bombing rocked the provincial capital of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, this particular suicide bombing was carried out in a mosque in the police line area in which 100 people lost their lives and scores were injured. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, after this particular attack, urged for the political unity in order to eradicate the scourge of terrorism from the country, saying, let me quote, through their despicable actions, terrorists want to spread fear and paranoia among the masses and reverse our hard-earned gains against terrorism and militancy, unquote. Now we have seen in the recent past a resurgence of violent terrorist incidents in various parts of the country, particularly when we talk about Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. The National Security Committee meeting was organized that delivered a categorical message that terrorists are the enemies of Pakistan and no one would be allowed to harm the national security. After this Peshawar deadly bombing, Defence Minister Khaja Asif, while talking to reporters at the Parliament House and also at the floor of the Assembly, said that National Security Committee will decide on an operation to eliminate terrorists from the country. We'll be discussing the possibility of this operation in order to eliminate militancy and terrorism from the country. At the same time, Minister Sherry Rahman has urged for the swift implementation of the National Action Plan. At the same time, we have seen the current government has also criticized the previous government of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf for going into negotiations with the banned Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan and also rehabilitating and resettling the members of the militant group and their families in Pakistan. We have seen when we talk about the possibility of the military operations against these banned terrorist outfits, Pakistan launched a number of grand operations to eliminate the scourge and menace from the country. We'll be talking about this possibility and how the authorities are going to strategize to deal with this resurgence of terrorism in the future and avoid untoward incident of this sort happening. And when we talk about the political unity, how crucial is this political consensus, which the Prime Minister has repeatedly said and has called for the political unity among the stakeholders regarding the elimination of this scourge from the country. We talk about also the responsibility and the role of the Afghan Taliban as per the Doha peace deal, the commitments they had made to the international community that they won't allow the Afghan soil to be used against any other country, especially the neighbors and also Pakistan. And Pakistani authorities with the Afghan Taliban had been trying to engage and impress upon them to dismantle the safe havens of the banned Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan on the Afghan soil. So what happens to be the role and the responsibility of the international community, because Pakistan had been the front line ally on the war on terror for a number of years, and Pakistan had to sacrifice in men and material. Over 80,000 lives were lost and $120 billion plus dollars of losses to the economy were incurred in the war on terror. We'll be looking at the options, what options lie at the hands of the Pakistani authorities to deal with this resurgence of terrorism in the country. And to talk more about this, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Dr. Shabana Fayyaz. She is Chairperson, Defence and Strategic Studies, Quaid-e-Azam University. Dr. Shabana, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. We are also honored to have been joined in the studio by Brigadier Retired Mohammad Zeeshan. He is Director General, Center for Peace, Security and Developmental Studies. Brigadier Zeeshan, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. We're also honored to have been joined in the studio by Mr. Hamayun Sarfraz Chattha. He's Senior Analyst. And Mr. Chattha, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. Let me begin the discussion with you, Dr. Shabana. So there has been a clear resurgence and such a deadly bombing. Khaja Asif, the Defence Minister, says it reminds of us of the painful memory of what happened at the APS back in 2014. Why there has been a resurgence? What core reasons do you associate with this resurgence of terrorism in various parts of the country in the recent past?
Well, this is a very, very broad question that you have asked. Well, in my humble opinion, I must say that there are diverse reasons. One can look into the factors that have led to the very tragic happenings that we have witnessed. This is what has happened last 2 days earlier is also beginning, or rather making what has happened in the past year. More than 120 attacks were carried out in 2022. So the wave was already there with a high and low momentum, but this time it was very, very deadly and unfortunate because so many precious lives have been lost and our shuhadas are a lot. The fact is, I think there are domestic reasons, there are internal reasons, there are regional reasons, and there are also our neighborhood reasons as well as the overall, unfortunately, the unsapping of the groups. I won't say a group, groups that have been working in sleeper cells within the country with the support of outside. So this is very a complex mix. One cannot say that this is, although the TTP has claimed the the responsibility for the attack is, but the fact of the matter is more worse than the what is present. Because what has happened is that there is a whole chain that needs to be disrupted, and it is not only the kinetic operations that will undo that, rather it has to be a mix of both kinetic and non-kinetic. And as we move forward in other discussions,
right.
Definitely we will move to the other steps that
Let's
can be taken.
Let's proceed with the discussion. Brigadier Zeeshan, the core reasons for this resurgence in the recent past.
Thank you for inviting me, first of all, and in my opinion, it wasn't a surprise. After 15th August 2021, it was expected that when Afghan Taliban will be in power at Kabul and the exit of coalition forces has taken place, Taliban from Pakistan, which is known as TTP, they will try and come back. So in my personal opinion, it wasn't a surprise, this resurgence. It had to happen. Now, what are the reasons?
So when you talk about the Kabul takeover by the Afghan Taliban after the international troops withdraw, of course, now there was an expectation on the Pakistani authorities that after the international troops withdraw from war-ravaged Afghanistan, the situation is going to come back to normalcy, and the kind of war Pakistan had been fighting against this menace for years. Grand operations had been launched. So we had given a decisive defeat to that menace. So what led to this resurgence after the Kabul takeover by the Taliban?
Okay, let's go back a little. When there was coalition in Afghanistan, international coalition, and the Afghan government was in support of TTP. Afghan intelligence from Kabul was in support of TTP, and TTP was thrown out of Pakistan. They were taking refuge and were very comfortable in Afghanistan. When that support vanished, when those inimical agencies' funding and support, it dried out, then TTP had to come back to Pakistan. One thing we must be very clear about, that TTP is not an ideologue kind of a terrorist organization. They are militarized. They are in large numbers, something like 4,000 to 10,000. Nobody knows the exact figure, but generally they are more than 1,000. Now, this large number cannot evaporate, and they belong to a region which was just adjacent to the Pak-Afghan border. So it was pretty obvious that when those supports, fundings, they have dried out inside Afghanistan, they will come back to Pakistan.
Right, Mr. Chattha, do you think there should have been a better situation after the international troops withdraw from Afghanistan and the Taliban took over? Because the TTP had been declaring their allegiance to the Afghan Taliban. So they could have impressed upon TTP whatever the promise that was made by Afghan Taliban in the Doha peace deal. They should have impressed upon the TTP that Afghan soil wouldn't be allowed to be used against any other country.
I think this was very much visible from the beginning. And there is a realization, I think, in the whole world that peace of Pakistan is very much entangled with the peace of Afghanistan. I think Pakistan needs to work on the betterment of Afghanistan as far as peace is concerned. This has become very vital for Pakistan. If we're able to built a stable and strong government in Kabul that will help Pakistan to maintain peace in this volatile region. I think that, and with that, we need to work on the sponsors which are sponsoring this terrorism. So I think we need to work on two-pronged policy. One is to strengthen the institutions in Afghanistan. We need to make this world realize that Afghanistan needs a stable and strong government, and with that, we need to work, or we need to realize the international forces that someone is financing these terrorists, and with that, we need to work to curb those finances.
Right. Dr. Shabana, when we talk about the resurgence in the recent past, now, how detrimental do you think the talks during the PTI tenure were, and they gave kind of an impetus to these banned outfits to relaunch their attacks in Pakistan?
I think during the PTI government regime, the talks that were carried out were not only the political talks. They were behind the strategic community, and a strategic establishment or stalwarts were the one who carefully calculated, that is their job, the threat emanating towards Pakistan, any threat from any country or any organization. So this was taken, and they were off the record briefings and visits, and that was followed up. Obviously, Prime Minister of that time, Imran Khan, and his cabinet must have been taken into confidence, and then there was an in-camera briefing of what was going to happen about that. Both the opposition parties and the others, the Nawaz Sharif League Party and the others, People's Party and others, were taken into confidence.
Now, when we talk about the NACTA, in its recent briefing to the Senate Standing Committee on Security, it categorically said that these talks with the banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan actually emboldened them.
Well, there is a mixed opinion. Well, most of the analysts are of the view, which I also feel to a great extent, is that talking directly to the insurgents and anti-state elements in a way gives them more push towards militancy. This is one argument. The second argument is that how long can you afford to be in a deadlock? But the fact of the matter is, what we see in Pakistan is that all the communities are in favor of peace and against terrorism of any sort. So they are not going to welcome that hard brand of TTP. So that was the thing. But unfortunately, the ceasefire, the government, they enlarged their limits. They also at one point wanted to have an office in neutral state. Like Doha, they were thinking like Tehrik-e-Taliban Afghanistan. And then they also, that have been recently come out in their publications and others, that wanted to have the re-merger of the FATA, and you know that, and then combined with that the Nizam-e Islami or the Adal. So this is a mixed brand. So it is more than an ideology, it is a militarized part, and it also has a financial element to it. It is not only the militants hardcore, there are other elements which I feel are the criminals and those who are also doing their business in the garb of militancy. Because you know, chaos favors all anti-state elements. So when you have the chaos, when you have the lawlessness, when you have the fear or you have the insecurity within the citizens, of course, in that environment, all the state actors or non-state actors specifically against the state, they have the best time to mushroom.
Right. Brigadier Zeeshan, how detrimental were those talks under the PTI government with those militants in giving them an impetus to relaunch themselves?
I will not comment much on the talks because that will be little political and it is being played politically. What I would suggest, as Dr. Shabana has highlighted, that you just cannot start the kinetic prong without giving a chance to peaceful negotiations. Negotiations, they will always happen, even when there are kinetic prongs in motion or then active operation has been launched by military and law enforcing agencies. At that point in time, the negotiations behind the scenes keep happening. What I would suggest that at this point in time, we should move ahead of blaming previous government for talks with TTP.
Right. So, Mr. Chattha, what's your take regarding this? How detrimental do you think were the talks, the dialogue with the banned Tehrik-e-Taliban?
Well, I think this is the temporary process. It won't help to change things permanently. Even if we do talks, that will maybe help to curb a particular group. We have millions of fighters beyond that border, or beyond, even beyond Afghanistan. So they have a free area. My opinion is that we need to work on Afghanistan. We need to realize this world that Afghanistan needs a stable government
that is what
that can
Pakistani
control
authorities over the
terrorism.
years
Without
have been-
that, these mayas will have no result.
So that's what Pakistani authorities had been repeatedly saying, that a peaceful and a stable Afghanistan is in the best interest of the entire region. So that is the case that Pakistan had been advocating, and that's why it facilitated the Afghan peace and reconciliation processes also.
Sir, without considering that whether the Taliban, which are ruling Pakistan, the question is whether they have this capacity to curb this terrorism. This is also the question. Let's say if we start negotiations with the Taliban in Afghanistan, who are ruling Afghanistan, do you really think they have capacity to curb this terrorism in all its forms? That is also the major question.
So what do you think?
They
Do they
cannot
have a
provide
capacity?
they cannot provide food to their people. They cannot provide security to their people. How come they can control terrorism in Pakistan?
But they control the largest swathes of the territory in Afghanistan, and they made a promise to the international community
Sir,
that
they are
would
made up of
not-
different groups. They are made up of different groups who have different interests. They might be together in the name of religion, but I think there are many factors to that, and that is where we need the attention of this world. We need the attention of the superpowers or the powers which can help to stabilize this
So
region.
what should ideally be done by the international powers?
Sir, two or three pronged. One is to strengthen the economy of Afghanistan, is to internationalize them, give them opportunity to become part of the modern world, so that this process which they are like enjoying in this world, like they are saying that they are the big fighters, this should end at some point. They are suffering. They are suffering for the last 5 decades. Their children are suffering. Their women are suffering. They are suffering. So I think there should be end to that. They should realize that they could have a peaceful future, and for that I think there are multiple steps which need to be taken. This may take decades, but Pakistan needs to work on that. Peace will only be possible when Afghanistan will be peaceful.
Yeah, how to internationalize them, the second point that you just highlighted, because again, they keep on violating the promises that they made to the international community. How is the international community going to respond to that? Of course, it's going to impose sanctions regarding the kind of behavior the Afghan Taliban has.
So the idea or the method of the government or the state should be that which is recognized by the whole world. Pakistan is a democratic country, India is a democratic country, China is a democratic country, America is a democratic country, and with that Afghanistan is perhaps the only country on earth which is ruled by the warlords. How come it is possible that they can bring peace to the world?
So is it because of the international community that the people over there
That the international
So
response.
Dr. Shabana, your take regarding, when we specifically talk about if the Afghan Taliban keep on violating what the international norms are actually, and what they promise to the international community, so how to internationalize them? They so desperately look for the recognition also. So, I mean, why would the international community consider giving them recognition when they're banning women from attending the university, they're banning them to become employed at the international NGOs also? So what's your take regarding that?
I think Chattha Saab has, what he has mentioned is two things. What he, partly I buy his argument, number one, don't wholly, that we need to help Afghanistan being a peaceful state. That's the only thing I can state. I don't want to say whether it is any government, Any government that is for the people of Afghanistan is fine with us. We want stable Afghanistan. That has always been Pakistan's state. Unfortunately, what we are happening today is that, yes, Tehrik-e-Taliban Afghanistan, we all know that we are all well-wishers of that, gave a promise and also an undertaking that Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan that also fought along, according to the reports, media reports, along them, will not be engaged in any activity against Pakistan and will give up arms. Well, this has not happened. Why it has not happened? As he has said, maybe they are not in control. I may put up, maybe they don't want that.
So when
or
I
maybe
declare-
they cannot afford that.
So
you
that
can
gives,
say.
that gives a rise to an assumption that if I declare an allegiance to you and I just have to follow in what you give me. So you have, if you impress upon me to follow a certain path, and since I have declared my allegiance towards you, it's, so how I am going to violate
This is
what?
a classic case of when an insurgent comes into power. They are different, like a political parties before and after the elections. The same is what is happening in Afghanistan. The question is, as you have mentioned, that we should continue to internationalize, we should continue to say Afghanistan. But the fact of the matter is, I agree, Afghanistan peace is in our hand, is not, is in interest. But does it mean that unrest in our country favors others? This is a critical question. As a Pakistani, as a national state, as a state for the people of the country, we have to fend for ourselves. This is number one. And number two, by blaming that everything that is coming back in Pakistan is only because of the Tehrik-e-Taliban, Afghanistan may be a big exaggeration.
Right.
So we also have to look into the factors that external actors, I don't believe that external funders across our adversaries are not funding the TTP. I still believe that there is a lot of elements who may be using them, or TTP will be using them against the present setup in Pakistan.
The role of peace spoilers that you want mean to say?
The role of?
The role of peace spoilers.
Yes,
as we
of
saw
course,
during the peace
of
and
course,
reconciliation.
Definitely, they are always at play. They are always at play, whether it is in Gwadar, whether it is in Balochistan, whether it is in KP, whether it is in Islamabad or anywhere else.
So there comes the role of international community, no?
One thing, I keep on saying that why there are statements international community must do it.
I mean,
What
when a
international
certain
community can do?
state is sponsoring terrorism and it is funding terrorists and banned outfits, so if the country against which it is continuously carrying out those sort of activities, it categorically shares the dossiers with the international community, the United Nations Secretary General. So it happens to be the responsibility of the international community or the international apparatus in order to impress upon that transgressor. Isn't that
Who
so?
is the transgressor? This is $1 million question.
The India, I
Can
mean,
we-
there was a categorical
Dossiers
press.
are always there. You know, in real world, what dossiers are very, very important. But what matters is what the weight of all sorts, strategic, economic and other, you carry on the world mark. Do we need to look at international community all the time to fix ourselves? We not. We have fixed terrorism before. We did it, and
We'll
I
come to
have
this
full
point.
faith we can fix it in
Brigadier
inshallah.
Zeeshan, your take regarding internationalizing the Afghan Taliban, no matter how much violations they continue to make.
In this regard, my first comment will be that when that document or the text of peace agreement between United States and Afghan Taliban, when we all we read that text, there was hope, but realization of what was written in it from both sides. People were very skeptical, and people had doubts even at that time. Coming back to what is the situation right now, not going into much detail, everybody is pretty clear about what's happening inside Afghanistan and what is this internationalized situation of Afghan Taliban in Kabul. Well, at this point in time, and the subject we are dealing with, which is the TTP's resurgence, it is an environment which we should be considering if of immediate and short-term nature. Whatever is said about internationalizing a support base for Afghan Taliban or for Afghanistan, that's a very long-term project. So in my opinion, for handling the TTP resurgence, we should not be banking much on the outside powers. We will have to have a diplomatic prong, but our basic focus should be in immediate and short term.
So what solutions lie ahead? The implementation, the revival of the National Action Plan, as Minister Sherry Rahman has also urged, the swift implementation of the National Action Plan?
National Action Plan, in very simple words, is a whole of nation approach kind of a thing, where you have to have a military prong, you have to have a political prong, a socio-economic prong, and a diplomatic prong. And these all things have to be coordinated at the level of Parliament or National Security Committee. And in my opinion, these various prongs of the strategy, they have to come into force immediately and should not be politicized.
So what ideally those could be? I mean, is it only related to kinetic or other domains also, and what those domains could be?
Okay, let me give an answer. TTP is alive. It is made of human beings. They have an agenda, an ideology. They want merger of newly made districts back to FATA, and they want Sharia laws to be imposed. Those two major demands, which are not acceptable here in Pakistan. They have certain kind of oxygen. That oxygen is in terms of human resource. That oxygen is in terms of funding. That oxygen is in terms of access to explosive arms and ammunition. And then the third aspect is the geographic feasibility of their movements, of their hideouts, and their logistics. Now, in these three terms, the environment has changed since last 5 years. TTP no longer enjoys public support in their core areas, which are the agencies, and TTP does not enjoy a geographic difficulty for the field-based law enforcing agencies and military. Now there is a road network, there's lot of activity happening in all parts of the erstwhile FATA, and this environment is not in favor of TTP. Now coming back to the human resource, their human resource is also limited and the funding sources are also limited. We may find it right now after this recent attack and 100 Shoda after this attack on the police lines in Peshawar, we may find it something that we are going back to 2008 or 2010 kind of a situation. But I feel that TTP also does not have lot of backup. And with bit of, sharp, well coordinated this national action plan, we should be able to handle TTP in short time.
Right, Mr. Chattha, your take regarding this. The four very pertinent points highlighted by Brigadier Zeeshan: the access to human resource, access to funding, access to explosives, and geographic access. So Brigadier Zeeshan is of the view that they have a limitation to that.
I agree with that. I think our institutions have the capacity to at least rest them for the time being. But my concern is what is the guarantee that they will not come back again? So to make that sure, we need to work on Afghanistan, and we need to maybe make more research on that. We need to do more work on that, and all of that, we need to dismantle the concept of jihad, which was devised 3 decades ago. That is where they are getting this fooder. They are getting this human resource, they are getting their funding. That need to be worked on.
So there was a fatwa during this resurgence of terror incidents by the ulama belonging mainly to Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. So what else needs to be done? I mean, that very concept of...
Sir, I think that is not affecting them at all, these fatwas anymore. So I think they have ingrained that concept in them. We need to work. I think it will also take, maybe it will take few years to work on that. Or people who have been radicalized.
How to do it? If the fatwas are coming in from the ulama denouncing what the banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan is doing, and if they are not giving any heed to those fatwas, what else needs to be done? How to do that?
Sir, answer is very simple. How the concept of jihad was coined. So that the answer lies in that. If
No,
that, if
the
it was
concept of
fine-
jihad or the interpretation by a certain school of thought. I mean, that's
But that
debatable.
was
I mean,
quoted
it's
by,
not
I
about the
think,
concept of
by
jihad
the
because
whole
it's
region.
an all-encompassing phenomenon. It is not only with the armed struggle. It relates to your personal jihad against your own self also. I mean, it has
That-
various dimensions. So now when you're
I have
talking
no
about...
problem with the jihad
So
word,
it's about the
to be very
interpretation.
clear.
Dr. Shabana, your take regarding this.
Well, I agree with it. I think to combat terrorism and to counter it, there are many steps to it. It is a generational process. Kinetic approach is very useful because ultimately the will to fight comes from within and from outside as well. You dry up the resources, you dry up the facilities, as Zeeshan Sahab has said, but at the same moment, a holistic approach is the only answer. But unfortunately for countries like us, because of our limited facilities and limited resources available, rehabilitation and de-radicalization is a big challenge. Pakistan has very successfully launched a narrative building campaign, whether in a form of Pegham-e Pakistan, in almost all corners of the country, back into FATA and every corner. You made the Balochis, the young youth being part of that project, whether in a form of the sports, whether in form of dramas, whether in form of debates. Narrative building is going on very well. But community-centered approach is something I still feel is something that is a subject that we really need to focus on. This is one aspect. Number two aspect is that you need to say that our CT was wrapped up. I think it is wrong. Pakistan counterterrorism operation have been continuing and is continuing even to date in Waziristan, in Balochistan, that is called IBOs, intelligence-based operations. And our young soldiers and others, they are being martyred on daily basis and they are giving shahadat, being shaheed for that. So Pakistan is very much working on that. But at the same time, to rehabilitate Taliban's can only happen, TTPs, once there is a visible and concrete dialogue that is in favor of Pakistan people and in favor of also the people of Pakistan who are against Pakistan.
So Pakistani authorities have categorically said that there is not an option of dialogue with
At
banned
this moment, it
Taliban
looks
Pakistan
there is
until
no
they
option.
surrender. Until they
I
surrender.
think this is a well-stated position. This is a position that TTP has brought itself to it. They were given an olive branch, they could not take it. They themselves have renounced the ceasefire in November. So the patience has always been shown by the state, and I think state will again show the patience because state is more than a cult. State is more than a non-state organization, A state has to have many eyes to it. So that is why I don't think that all windows will be closed. But yes, as have been pointed out, National Action Plan is not dead. It was never dead. And it was only, I always say to it, there's a lot of analysis and debate on national action. It's like an objective resolution. It is a document that gives a vision how to move forward. And all governments, whatever party comes and go, they have to work towards the
It was
betterment of
reviewed back in
Pakistan.
2021 also.
It has been, it's good always to have a rethinking.
What more needs to be done in order to holistically and implement it in letter and spirit?
I think we have plugged in a lot of plugs, specifically regarding the FATF. Pakistan has done remarkably well, and after a long, long walk, we have walked out of that hell. And that was the bottleneck that we gave. We have done a lot on reforms, but still a meaningful reforms is not still done. And similarly, we unfortunately, the banning and renaming and resurfacing of organization in this digital world continues to happen.
So how can that be curtailed?
That only can be curtailed through a holistic policy. And that is not only the state's job. I always say this, it is a state and society contract that needs to be revitalized. Political parties have to play the foot, but unfortunately, if they are fighting within each other, it is very difficult.
Brigadier Zeeshan, your take, you have to add something to it.
Try and understand the socio-economic lifestyle of TTP. It is based on their expertise in militancy, extremism, and violence. Now, why it was the term of jihad was used, I don't think so that jihad or their extremism has anything to do with the religion. It has to do with the social system which exists in the tribal areas of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Now, as has been highlighted, National Action Plan had a prong of socio-economic development. And what we have seen in past 15 years, or especially last 10 years, there is a very large network of roads, bridges, then the civic amenities like hospitals, colleges, schools, cadet colleges, markets, commercial areas have been developed. That is a difference between what the tribal region was 15 years back and what tribal region is today. From North Waziristan, you can reach Islamabad in matter of 6 to 8 hours, which used to take more than 2 days 10, 15 years back. So this is something which has to be encountered by TTP. Now TTP, every fighter in TTP cannot be that hardcore, which can be, few hundred. Rest are all socio-economic hostage to that mindset, to that environment of violence and extremism. If they are given opportunity to earn their living respectfully and live with their families peacefully, I think we will find a great degree of TTP fighters going back to their villages and families and trying to settle peacefully. This prong is developed through National Action Plan, has been undertaken with the help of armed forces, with the help of the Engineer Corps, FWO of the Pakistan Army, and a lot of funding we have received from our friendly countries, especially UAE and Saudi Arabia, for all these socio-economic developments in the tribal region.
So what I understand from your take is it's very important to have the socio-economic development in those tribal areas to bring these members or the militants of this band outfit into the mainstream.
Yes, it is so important. Try and understand that anybody, irrespective of the extremist ideology that person is following, he wants to have a peaceful life for his children, for his family.
But since you have mentioned there has been a lot of developmental work going on in those tribal areas, so why haven't these members of this band outfit haven't given it a thought to take the advantage and the benefit of the socio-economic development that was happening over there, rather than resorting to what they had already been doing?
I may not have numbers right now, but if we go back to calculate what was the TTP in 2008 and 2010, the strength they had in various tribal agencies of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and what is their strength today, you will find a very big difference from that number. It should be more than tens of thousands then, and now it is few thousands. So it will have an effect.
Right. Mr. Chattha, your take on this socio-economic development in those areas.
I think that is very important. Brigadier Sahab has put it rightly. That is a very important aspect, and that is where I was referring to. Education is one of the socio-economic tools. We need to use that. We need to make them realize. And I think Muslim nation needs to work on that. The concept which was coined, I think, first quarter of last century by Hassan and Banna in the form of Ikhwan al-Muslimin. So that needs to be revised, I think, by whole of the Muslim nation. That has not benefited Muslim nation in any form.
So what sort of a platform do you think could be the most viable in dismantling
I think
that very
OIC could be used
How can it do it, and what sort of an action it can take in that?
Pakistan may lead it. Pakistan can convince the leading countries like Saudi Arabia and other countries to work on that concept, to give Muslim nation a new charter for that matter, which reconcile with the modern world or the modern concepts of life, so that the people should know that how to react and how to live in this world which is interconnected with each other, where an action which is done in Afghanistan has its impact in the United States or in the West. So I think we need to work on that. Pakistan should lead this process and give an idea to the world, or at least to the Muslim nation, that we need to change our outlook. Let's look at the East Asia, China, Malaysia, Indonesia, Japan. They are part of Asia, but they are far ahead of us because they have a very forward-looking concepts regarding economic and social aspects of the life. We need to work on that.
Right. Dr. Shabana, one thing that you earlier highlighted was is also part of the National Action Plan, the point number 7, that ensuring against re-emergence of proscribed organizations, so re-emergence. So when it comes to the digital age that you also mentioned your take, so how challenging that one happens to be for the authorities to ensure that there doesn't happen to be the re-emergence in this digital age?
Well, it is that globalization has benefited to all of us. We are, in capitalism age and a free economy and, good economic trades and education. You can be enrolled in other very good education institution in the West or likewise. But the fact of the matter is that it has also helped the violent non-state actors to a maximum age, because what they are recruiting, if you look into the portfolios of those who have been caught, whether of Al-Qaeda, ISIS, any other group, Al-Shabaab or any other groups, you will see that they are highly technology savvy persons in their cadres. And even in Pakistan, from elite, the engineering and other institutions, the students were involved in such activities. So what basically it gives a message is that there are different skins of a one organization, and the organizations have somebody working in a remote city who may be using the funds transfer, although it has become very difficult. But still there are ways, if you talk to the financial managers, how to swift the money using the multiple IDs, using the multiple icons of changing IP addresses, and the sending the logistics and so on and so forth. So in other words, the business of terrorism is much more sophisticated than it was earlier. So this is one thing. And another important thing is that whether it is easy, at the same time it is difficult. For the Pakistan state, like we have undertaken the laws like cyber laws, we have undertaken also artificial intelligence mentoring and things like that, and also talking to the other organizations, Facebook and others, like petitions to them that you have to ban certain organizations who are indirectly selling the agenda. We are very careful on that. But what really troubles me is the use of YouTube. You cannot vet it 100%. You can vet it 60% from the strategic community mind, but not 100%, and this TikTok mechanism. And this is not only the Western, there are so many local types of YouTubes and type of TikToks that are going on, and the use of mobile through texting. So this is very, very volatile and a big issue that no state, even in US, can simply control even the white terrorist, they cannot control it. It can only be controlled if there is the majority of the people are on board in the system of the government where they are living in.
Oh, right.
They believe in the system like democracy, the rule of law, and the prosperity, and they see a future towards that. Otherwise, I don't think so that you can, completely control them 100%.
Brigadier Zeeshan, how to ensure a re-emergence? What do you have to add? Do you agree with what Dr. Shabana has just said?
I don't think that we cannot agree with each other right now. We are all on the same axis, and we are converging on the same point, that how to, arrest this resurgence. 2 points, quick ones. First of all, we have to have a very proactive diplomatic prong, because internationalizing the issue is a very broad term, but using the international community, their capabilities, let's say in the context of digital domain, utilizing various international forums for arresting any fund transfer, using international community to create an environment within the border regions of Afghanistan with Pakistan, where it becomes difficult for TTP fighters to cross the border into Pakistan or into go back to Afghanistan. A proactive diplomatic prong will be necessary, and I'm sure Pakistan has been proactive on national security issues since last 10 years, and our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, it won't be a problem for them. The second point I want to highlight here, it is the kinetic prong which will be undertaken by the law enforcing agencies and Pakistan Army. That may not be very difficult. It will take sacrifices, but since we have experience of last 15-20 years operating in this terrain, in this region, and in the same context of low intensity conflict, it won't be that big a problem. It will take sacrifices, it will take certain time. But apart from that, we need political consensus within our country. If we are all as a nation, as political entities, as religious political entities, if we are on one point united, that there is no space for extremism, there is no space for terrorism, and militancy cannot be accepted at any cost, then we can send a good message to the TTP also. We can strengthen the locals living in the tribal areas to be encouraged to support and provide information against TTP to the law enforcing agencies and the military. And we will also put up a brave and a united front in the international community. They will also be more proactively helping us then.
Right. Mr. Chattha, as Prime Minister also has said that we can fight our political fights later, and he has called for the political unity among all the stakeholders. First of all, how crucial that is and how to develop that when there is so much uncertainty already, there is so much polarization because of the politics of agitation and confrontation.
Well, I think we don't have any other option beside showing unity to finish this menace, and the political parties needs to work on that. They need to show their support to rally behind the law enforcement agencies and to give them full mandate of the people so that they can fight with a very high spirit to end this problem.
Right. Dr. Shabana, how that political consensus at this point in time could be formed?
I think political consensus, if you look around all the parties, they are very much in favor of eradication of terrorism from the country. And we also must say that almost all the leaders feel threatened from one sort of extremist or another, whether it's just the matter of labeling, you know, whether you can say it's a non-state actor, whether you say it's a political actor. So the threat of violence is always there. So and all are committed to National Action Plan. But the important point to register is political scoring at the expense of one another only confuses a nation. And more the nation is confused, the more confused policy you come up with. I think this is my only message can be that we need a clear policy, and Pakistan has a clear roadmap. So one shouldn't be using it for political purposes.
Dr. Shabana Fayyaz, Chairperson, Defence and Strategic Studies, Quaid-e-Azam University, thank you very much for taking time out for Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. Brigadier Retired Mohammad Zeeshan, Director General, Center for Peace, Security and Developmental Studies, thank you very much for your time, sir, also for being with us on Views on News tonight. Mr. Hamayun, Sarfraz, Chattha, Senior Analyst, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's Views on News. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.